You spent years studying English. You passed the exams, memorized grammar rules, watched Netflix without subtitles. So why does a simple conversation at university suddenly feel terrifying? One friendly question, what's your major? And your mind freezes. If you're preparing to study abroad, or you've already experienced that awkward, silent panic in real conversations, this episode is for you. Today on Learn English Lab, we're talking about the real English international students need to survive and thrive on campus, from making friends and joining conversations to sounding natural and confident in everyday situations. Because studying abroad isn't just about speaking English, it's about connecting, belonging, and finally feeling like you can be yourself in another language.
Yeah, and that framing right there is the fundamental shift we are making today. The entire mission of our deep dive is to tear down that artificial textbook version of language learning.
Yeah, the version that feels so rigid, right?
100%. Because for so long, the academic approach has forced students to chase a phantom. This idea of flawless grammar, perfectly constructed passive sentences, or like a manufactured American or British accent.
Which is just exhausting.
It really is. So we're throwing that out the window. The primary objective here isn't grammatical perfection. It's genuine, authentic communication.
Right.
It's about building the psychological comfort necessary to navigate what is an incredibly complex, fast-moving social environment. We want to unlock the tools that allow you to express the nuance of your actual personality. You shouldn't have to feel trapped inside a simplified second language version of yourself.
No, I mean, it is such a painful reality for so many. There's this massive disconnect between knowing the language on paper, like passing the IELTS or the TOEFL with flying colors, and then completely freezing when a barista asks you a basic question.
Oh, absolutely. The deer in the headlights look.
Totally. And to truly understand the gravity of this, I want you, the listener, to mentally step into this scenario. Close your eyes, assuming you aren't driving right now. Imagine you have just landed after a 14-hour flight.
You're jet-lagged, exhausted.
Beyond exhausted. You are sleep-deprived. You've dragged 2 overwhelmingly heavy suitcases off the luggage carousel. You've navigated the confusing airport shuttle, and now you are standing at the edge of a massive, sprawling university campus.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a picturesque landscape of ancient brick buildings, ivy-covered walls, and massive oak trees. Or, maybe it's a dense, chaotic, vertical city campus where thousands of students are rushing past you.
Either way, it's intense.
It really is. Because either way, the safety net of your home country is instantly gone. Your support system is an ocean away. You're stepping onto this campus, and the sheer volume of auditory and visual information is overwhelming.
It's a complete system shock.
Definitely. So this discussion today is your comprehensive audio survival guide to making it through those critical first months.
I mean, just think about that sensory overload of that specific moment. Stepping off the shuttle with your luggage. It is undeniably the most jarring psychological transition of the entire study abroad experience.
Right, because it's suddenly real.
Yes. You are shifting from the theoretical anticipation of studying abroad into the hard physical reality of it.
Yeah.
And before you can even think about sitting in a beautiful library reading philosophy or finding a group of lifelong friends, you have to successfully, practically exist on this campus.
Exist as a functioning human, basically.
Specifically that. You are immediately thrust into a labyrinth of administration. The physical arrival must transition instantly into tackling the essential, utterly vital first-day logistics. The university is a machine, and you have to figure out how to register yourself into its system.
Right, because you are effectively a ghost on that campus until the paperwork is done. The textbook doesn't teach you how to survive a bureaucracy in a second language.
It really doesn't.
So let's unpack the essential first-day survival vocabulary. These are the locations and concepts you absolutely must decode the second you drop your bags in your room. First on the list is the admissions office.
Ah, yes. The gatekeepers.
Totally. When you are an international student, this place is essentially the nerve center for your existence. It is where your enrollment is finalized, where transcripts from your home country are verified, and where any lingering paperwork disputes are settled.
Yet, while the admissions office processes you, the ISS, International Student Services, is what actually sustains you.
Oh, that's a great distinction.
I would argue this is the single most critical department on any university campus for a student arriving from abroad. The professionals in the ISS are the specialists dealing with the labyrinth of visa regulations, cultural adjustment programs, and mandatory orientation schedules.
And work limits too, right?
Yes, the rigid legal requirements dictating how many hours you can legally work or study. They are your designated advocates in an otherwise impersonal system.
I have heard so many horror stories of students ignoring emails from the ISS because they thought it was just campus spam, only to find out their visa status was in jeopardy.
It happens all the time.
It is the one office you find on day one. But moving from the legal to the practical, you need your student ID, often called your campus card. This piece of plastic is the absolute passport to your new life.
Without a doubt.
Because without it, you are locked out of your own dormitory building, you can't check out a book, you can't access the dining hall. It often acts as a debit card for campus laundry and printing.
It's your lifeline. And then usually in that same first week, you are thrown into orientation.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Which isn't just a brief welcome speech. It is a concentrated, often week-long, mandatory event. It is designed to aggressively download the campus rules into your brain, introduce the services, and frankly, it is the social crucible, where you will likely meet a huge portion of your initial social circle.
That's where you find your people, or at least try to.
Exactly. I mean, for sure. And during that orientation, you will hear a barrage of terms related to enrollment. Now, enrollment isn't just signing up. It is the official, binding administrative process of securing your seat in specific courses, which often dictates your tuition bill.
Super stressful.
Very. But out of all the administrative jargon thrown at you in that first week, one term represents the most profound cultural shift you will face, and that's office hours.
Ah, office hours. So important.
These are designated, heavily protected blocks of time when a professor sits in their office, specifically waiting for students to come in for individual meetings. We will explore the deep psychology of that later, but you must understand early on that office hours are the bedrock of academic relationships in English-speaking universities.
Okay, so knowing the definitions is one thing, but if you look at the bigger picture, why does distinguishing between the admissions office and the ISS actually matter on a practical level? A student might think, I'll just ask someone when I need something.
Well, the danger there lies in misunderstanding the culture of a massive Western academic institution. What we're really discussing here is the concept of self-advocacy.
Self-advocacy, okay.
In a university with 30 or 40,000 students, the administration operates on the assumption of independence. Nobody's going to hold your hand, notice you looking confused in a hallway, and walk you to the correct department.
Yeah, you're not in high school anymore.
Spot on. You are expected to advocate for yourself. Understanding the specific domains of these departments is a matter of personal agency. If you know that the ISS handles visa compliance and the admissions office handles course credits, you bypass hours of wandering from building to building.
And getting redirected by annoyed receptionists.
Yes, and feeling completely lost in translation. Understanding the vocabulary gives you immediate control over your environment.
The agency aspect is huge. It really makes me think of playing a massive open-world video game.
Oh, I like that comparison.
Right. When you first load into the game, the entire map is completely covered in a gray fog. You have no idea where the dangers are, where the resources are, or where you are supposed to go. You are just stumbling around in the dark.
A very stressful game.
Totally. Going through orientation, securing your student ID, and locating the International Student Services Office, that process is like unlocking the base mat. It clears the fog. It is the foundational requirement that opens up the rest of the world so you can actually begin to play the game on your own terms.
That analogy undeniably illustrates the stakes. But the reality is, many international students try to play this game on hard mode.
Wait, how so?
They allow their anxiety over speaking imperfect English to prevent them from asking for directions or utilizing these resources. They try to navigate the fog entirely alone because they are terrified of looking incompetent.
Which just makes everything harder.
It does. To navigate that newly revealed map, you have to possess the right tools. Specifically, the interpersonal language required to ask for assistance without feeling like an intolerable burden to the native speakers around you.
Let's ground this in a real-world scenario. Imagine you are wandering around the campus. The map on your phone isn't making sense because all the brick buildings look identical.
They always do.
Always. You see a campus staff member or a senior student walking briskly. You are desperate for help, but the fear of mispronouncing a word is paralyzing you. If you just yell, "Where is ISS?" It sounds abrupt, maybe even rude.
Definitely a bit aggressive.
Right. Instead, you need a formulation that opens the door gently. You could approach and say something like, "Excuse me, I'm a new international student. I'm looking for the ISS. And to be honest, I also really need to find an ATM."
Let's deconstruct why that specific phrasing is a masterful piece of communication. Initiating with, "Excuse me," or "I'm sorry to bother you," serves as a universal social buffer.
It softens the interruption.
Yes. It acknowledges that you are interrupting their trajectory and signals immediate respect for their time. But the true brilliance is the addition of the phrase, "I'm a new international student."
Which is like a magic spell.
It is a psychological skeleton key. It instantly triggers empathy in the listener. It immediately explains away any hesitation in your voice, any unfamiliarity in your accent, or any confusion in your demeanor.
It changes the whole dynamic.
It transforms the person you are speaking to from a random stranger into a designated guide. You are inviting them to demonstrate hospitality.
It totally disarms them. People fundamentally want to be helpful when they understand the context of the struggle. It removes the weird tension.
They really do.
I want you, the listener, to visualize this. You are standing on that brick pathway. I want you to mentally pocket 3 crucial survival phrases. First phrase, could you point me in the direction of? Notice the softening effect.
Very gentle.
Yeah, you aren't demanding a fixed location like where is the library. You are asking for guidance, which is much less aggressive. Second phrase, I'm sorry to bother you, but, which we just analyzed as the ultimate polite interruption.
Essential.
And the third phrase, which might be the most vital tool in your entire arsenal when a native speaker replies at the speed of light. Could you say that again, please? I didn't quite catch that.
I cannot stress the importance of that third phrase enough. When a native speaker uses local slang or speaks incredibly fast, the international student's default internal reaction is usually, "My English is terrible, I am failing."
They just blame themselves.
They do. But the phrase, "I didn't quite catch that," is a radical act of self-forgiveness. It removes the blame from your supposed lack of language skills and places the friction on the interaction itself. It is a completely standard phrase that native speakers use with one another daily. It normalizes the misunderstanding.
Okay, so you've successfully navigated the bureaucracy, the map is unlocked, the fog is lifted, you have your ID, you found the ATM, and your visa is secure. The administrative survival phase is over.
Time for the real challenge.
Yeah, we now move into the environment where your actual life will happen. It is time to meet the people you'll be sleeping 3 feet away from and sitting next to in lecture halls. We are diving into the social icebreakers and the highly complex world of dormitory dynamics.
This environment is where the rigid academic vocabulary suddenly collides with deeply personal, informal interactions. When you meet another student, the absolute first question you will be asked without fail is, "What's your major?"
Every single time.
Your major is your primary declared area of academic specialization. Your minor is a secondary, smaller concentration of classes.
But the whole concept of a major is a massive point of cultural friction. In the US system, you can enter university as undecided. You can spend 2 years taking random classes in art history, biology, and literature before declaring a major.
Which blows a lot of people's minds.
Right. If you explain that to a European student, they are baffled. In many European systems, you don't go to university to find yourself. You apply directly to a specific faculty. You are a law student or a medical student from day one.
Yes, the path is set.
So when an American asks an international student, "What's your major?" the international student often over-explains their entire rigid career trajectory, which kills the casual vibe of the conversation. And speaking of European systems, if you are studying in the US, Australia, or Canada, and you introduce yourself by saying, "I'm on Erasmus," prepare for absolute silence.
That is a classic blind spot. The Erasmus program is an institution in Europe, but outside of it, it has zero cultural resonance. You have to learn to translate your context, not just your words.
Right, say it differently.
You have to adapt your introduction to say it's a European exchange program. Similarly, the structural vocabulary of time shifts radically depending on your location.
Like semesters versus quarters.
Specifically that. American universities predominantly utilize the semester system, which divides the year into 2 main terms. Alternatively, some use the quarter system, a high-speed, intense division of the year, into 3 main academic periods, plus a summer session.
And then there's the class hierarchy.
And naturally, you must decode the American class hierarchy terminology. Freshman for first year, sophomore for second year, junior for third year, and senior for fourth year.
I always find the etymology of those terms hilarious, especially sophomore. It literally stems from Greek roots, meaning wise fool.
It's surprisingly accurate.
It perfectly describes a second-year student. You've survived the first year, so you think you are incredibly wise and know everything about the campus, but in the grand scheme of the academic world, you are still completely foolish.
That is undeniably true.
But transitioning from the classroom hierarchy to where you actually sleep, the housing vocabulary carries immense emotional weight. You have your roommate. For many international students, the concept of a roommate, someone who sleeps in the exact same room as you, rather than just sharing an apartment, is a profound culture shock. They are used to having a door they can close.
The loss of privacy is a monumental psychological adjustment. You are living in a residence hall or a dorm. Your floor, your entire immediate living environment is governed by an RA, a resident advisor.
Who isn't like a police officer?
No, this is not a security guard. This is an older, upperclassman student employed by the university. Their role is a strange hybrid of enforcing disciplinary rules, handling late-night lockouts, and acting as a mediator for the inevitable interpersonal conflicts.
Which are definitely going to happen.
Oh, they are. You also have to navigate shared spaces. The common room, which is the epicenter of forced socialization. The quiet hours, which are strictly enforced periods, especially during exams, when the noise level must drop to zero. And finally, the laundry room, which operates on an entirely unspoken, cutthroat system of etiquette.
The laundry room is basically the Wild West of the dormitory.
It really is.
If you are an international student, the idea of touching a stranger's clothing might seem like a massive violation of boundaries. But in a U.S. dorm on a Sunday night when every machine is full, if someone's clothes have been sitting in a finished washing machine for more than 15 minutes, it is completely socially acceptable to pull their wet clothes out, put them on top of the machine, and take their spot.
Yep, that's just how it works.
If you don't know that rule, you will wait for hours in a silent rage. And imagine navigating that alongside the stress of meeting your roommate. You are suddenly forced to establish boundaries politely in a second language.
It's a lot to handle all at once.
You're negotiating sleep habits, asking, are you an early riser or a night owl? You're desperately attempting to suggest a cleaning schedule without sounding dictatorial or like their mother. You are doing all of this while living out of a suitcase.
This specific friction brings us to a profound cultural divide, particularly noticeable for students arriving from more socially formal societies, such as Germany, Austria, Switzerland, or various Asian countries.
Where there are more rules for interactions.
Yes, in many global cultures, the initial interaction between strangers is governed by distinct protective layers of formality. Take the German language structure as an example. You have the formal, Sie, and the informal du.
Ah, right.
You do not simply choose to use du with a stranger, a superior, or an older individual. You wait for an explicit verbal invitation to drop the formality. The language itself builds a wall of respect that must be consciously dismantled over time.
But the moment you step foot on a US, UK, or Australian campus, that wall is completely obliterated, isn't it? The formality is stripped away the second you make eye contact. You walk into a freshman seminar, you introduce yourself, state your major, say you are from Munich or Tokyo, and literally 3 minutes later, the person next to you is treating you like a childhood friend, calling you dude, and making casual plans to get coffee. For an international student, that speed feels like emotional whiplash.
The culture of English-speaking universities, particularly in North America, is aggressively informal. The assumption of intimacy happens almost immediately, and this frequently causes international students to severely misinterpret the social environment, leading to feelings of alienation or confusion.
I have to challenge this dynamic, though, because if I am an international student raised to believe that distance and title signify respect, and suddenly everyone is calling each other man or guys and addressing a highly educated professor by their first name, doesn't that imply the environment is inherently disrespectful?
I can see why it looks that way.
Right. If everyone is instantly casual, where is the reverence for the institution?
That is the specific philosophical trap that isolates so many international students. It requires us to completely redefine the mechanism of respect. In English-speaking academic cultures, being warm, relentlessly open, and instantly engaging is the highest demonstration of respect.
Wow. Okay, so it's flipped.
It is. Formality is not viewed as reverence. It is viewed as a barrier. Approachability replaces title. If a distinguished professor tells you to call them Dave, and you stubbornly insist on calling them Professor Smith because it makes you feel more culturally comfortable, you are actually creating distance.
You're pushing them away.
You are signaling that you are cold, aloof, and unwilling to participate in the community norms. True respect in this culture is not about linguistic deference. It's about showing up, dropping your armor, and engaging authentically with people around you.
That is a complete paradigm shift. Formality is viewed as a barrier, not a tribute. It's a completely different language of respect. But even if you understand that approachability is key, friendships don't just magically materialize while you are sitting silently in a lecture hall or staring at your roommate.
They take work.
Yeah, relationships are forged in the wild, transient spaces of the campus. That brings us to our next critical environment, the in-between moments and the complex architecture of small talk.
These are the micro-interactions. The 5 minutes lingering in the hallway before the seminar doors open. The 15 minutes waiting in line at the cafeteria. The walk across the quadrangle.
All those little moments.
These transient moments are where the social fabric of the university is actually woven. If you retreat into your phone during these moments, you will remain isolated.
Food is the ultimate equalizer, so let's analyze the dining culture first. If you can't feed yourself comfortably, your academic performance will tank. You will likely be operating on a meal plan, a prepaid system that grants you access to the dining hall.
A very chaotic place.
Oh, for many international students, the American dining hall is an arena of absolute chaos and excessive calories. It's a massive buffet-style free-for-all. You have to learn the concept of taking food to go or getting takeout if you need to eat while studying. And critically, modern campuses are hyper-aware of dietary needs.
That's a good point.
Terms like vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, or halal are not just preferences, they are highly respected and prominently labeled.
And beyond the dining hall lies the quintessential artery of university life, the campus coffee shop. But ordering coffee in a second language is a high-pressure linguistic minefield.
That is terrifying.
You are standing in a fast-moving line, you are desperately undercaffeinated, the music is loud, and suddenly the fundamental concepts of size and volume don't translate. You ask for a medium coffee, but you must realize that a medium in the US is often 12 to 16 ounces, which might be double the volume of a standard coffee in your home country.
And the absolute terror when the barista holding the marker shouts, "Name for the cup!" I have known brilliant international students who completely panic and just invent a simple English name like John or Mary.
Just to avoid the hassle.
Because they are exhausted from having their beautiful, culturally rich names horribly misspelled and then butchered when shouted across a crowded cafe. But let's say you survive the line. You get your coffee, you sit down next to a classmate. This is where the small talk initiates.
The dreaded small talk.
And small talk on a campus is an absolute art form. You complain about the absurd reading workload for your history class. You casually ask about their weekend plans. You discuss trying that weird new fusion taco place near the library. You bond over the shared trauma of a recent midterm exam.
To understand the difficulty of this, we have to examine the underlying cultural tension between sincerity and politeness. We discussed the German cultural contrast earlier, and it applies heavily here.
How so?
Many international students, not just from Europe, but globally, harbor a deep disdain for small talk. They perceive it as deeply superficial, fake, or simply a waste of breath. The internal monologue is, why are we discussing the rain? Neither of us controls the weather, and neither of us genuinely cares. If we have nothing profound to say, why are we speaking?
I mean, undeniably, they feel it is a performative waste of time. They want to jump straight to philosophy or politics or just enjoy the silence.
Yes, but that perspective completely misunderstands the function of the interaction. We need to radically reframe the purpose of small talk.
Reframe it how?
It is not an exchange of factual information. It is the vital first layer of friendship. It is an agreed-upon low-stakes ritual designed to test the interpersonal waters. It is the mechanism by which two humans signal to each other, I am safe, I am socially aware, I am friendly, and I am open to further, deeper interaction.
I have a metaphor for this that I think clarifies the dynamic perfectly. I always compare small talk to a physical handshake.
I love this analogy.
When you meet someone and shake their hand, you don't evaluate the deep existential meaning of the hand-holding. You don't walk away thinking, wow, the specific pressure of their palm against mine really revealed the hidden depths of their childhood trauma.
No.
Definitely not. It is simply the universally agreed upon physical ritual that indicates you come in peace and opens the door to the actual conversation. Small talk is the verbal handshake. You complain about the terrible weather for 2 minutes so that 10 minutes later, the social pathway is clear to talk about your anxieties, your ambitions, and your real life.
That verbal handshake concept captures the essence perfectly. However, the international student also faces the challenge of decoding the outcome of that handshake. This is a massive source of confusion and heartache.
Oh, the fake plans.
Yes, the inability to differentiate between a polite, fake invitation and a genuine, actionable one. In North American culture specifically, someone might end a pleasant conversation by saying, "We should totally hang out sometime," or "Let's grab lunch soon."
And the international student goes back to their dorm, feeling thrilled that they made a friend. And they sit waiting by their phone for 3 days, wondering why they haven't received a text with a specific restaurant location and a calendar invite. They feel lied to and rejected.
Undeniably, that misunderstanding causes a lot of pain. The phrase, "we should hang out sometime," is frequently utilized as a polite conversational sign-off. It translates emotionally to, "I enjoyed this interaction and I like you," but it is not a binding schedule.
It's just a nice way of saying goodbye.
Right. A genuine invitation contains parameters. "Are you free this Thursday at 3 p.m. to get coffee?" is a real invitation. But the strategic secret here, the method by which an international student can seize control of their social destiny, is to become the architect of the concrete suggestion.
Make the plans yourself.
Yes, if a native speaker uses the abstract, "we should grab coffee sometime," you intercept it. You reply, "I'd love that. I have a break on Friday morning at 10. Does that work for you?" You force the abstract politeness to materialize into a concrete reality.
That is incredibly empowering. You transition from passively waiting for the culture to adopt you to actively managing your own social calendar. You are playing the game on your terms.
You take back the agency.
All right. We have successfully navigated the social landscape. We survived the dining hall chaos, we decoded the verbal handshake, and we are making friends. We are now making a major thematic shift.
Into the classroom.
Yeah, it is time to step out of the quad and into the classroom. We are entering the academic arena. And the very first step in mastering this arena is fundamentally reimagining the role of the professor.
This is where the cultural shift regarding authority and hierarchy becomes acutely shocking. As we noted with the loss of formality in introductions, you are moving far away from rigid hierarchical titles.
Goodbye, Herr Professor?
Absolutely. You are no longer in an environment where the professor enters the room, delivers an undisputed monologue from a podium, and immediately vanishes behind a locked door. You are entering a highly interactive culture where professors actively desire your presence.
They want you to talk to them.
They want you to visit their offices. They expect you to challenge their published ideas. And frequently, they prefer you to address them by their first names.
Which honestly feels like you are violating a sacred law at first. The words catch in your throat. But to survive and excel in this new arena, you must master the specialized academic vocabulary.
It's a whole new language.
It is. The single most vital document in your entire university existence is the syllabus. It is not just an outline. It is a binding contract for the course. It details the exact deadlines, the unchangeable due dates, and the precise mathematical formula of what it takes to pass. If a rule is in the syllabus, the professor expects you to know it without asking.
You also must grasp the mechanics of an extension. That's the process of asking for additional time to complete an assignment due to illness or emergency. This is a negotiation that you must initiate proactively.
Yeah, professors do not grant them retroactively.
Never. You must also understand the concept of a thesis statement. It is not merely the topic of your essay. It is the arguable, defensible core of your intellectual position. And most critically, you must fully internalize the definitions of citation, reference, academic integrity, and plagiarism.
Oh, that's a big one.
The rules surrounding intellectual property and plagiarism in Western universities are draconian. Accidentally failing to cite a source can lead to expulsion. And pleading, "I didn't understand the citation style in my home country," is never accepted as a valid defense.
Those stakes are incredibly high. So let's walk through a real-world scenario to alleviate some of this pressure, because the concept of going to office hours is terrifying for a lot of students. They imagine walking into a genius's lair and being judged.
That's a very common fear.
Let's role-play a dialogue where a student walks into an office hour. They are struggling to narrow down a massive essay topic about social media and political participation. The student sits down, heart racing, and says, "Professor, I want to write my paper about how social media affects politics, but I know it feels too broad. I don't know what to do."
Okay, good start.
The professor doesn't just hand them a topic. The professor says, "Okay, that is broad. What is your specific argument? What are you trying to prove to me?"
Pushing them to think.
Right. The student thinks, then replies, Well, I think social media actually reduces real-world political action because people feel like just resharing an angry post is enough so they don't actually go out and vote. Boom! The professor's eyes light up. That is a thesis.
The underlying dynamic of that interaction is fascinating. The professor is not functioning as an oracle dispensing the correct answer. The professor is functioning as a whetstone. They are there to help the student sharpen and refine their own independent thinking. The goal is to guide the student from a passive observation to an active, arguable claim.
But let me present a major strategic dilemma here. What if a student feels utterly, physically terrified to disagree with the professor? Think about it. You are a 19 or 20-year-old undergraduate, speaking in your second language, sitting across a desk from an expert who has a PhD, a wall of diplomas, and has written 4 books on this exact subject.
It's intimidating.
How do you find the audacity, the sheer nerve to look them in the eye and say, I think your interpretation is wrong? Doesn't that risk failing the class out of spite?
That fear makes complete sense if you come from a system based on rote memorization and deference to the master. But it requires an understanding of the foundational philosophy of Western academia. Bringing an arguable, specific, even highly contrarian perspective is not an insult. It is entirely expected.
Wait, expected?
Yes. In fact, it is the defining characteristic of an A student. The professor does not want to read 30 essays that merely echo their own lectures back to them. They want to see evidence that you have engaged with the material deeply enough to synthesize it, analyze it, and form your own independent critique. Disagreement, when framed politely, structured logically, and backed by empirical evidence, is the primary currency of the intellectual realm.
So it's proof that you're trying.
Exactly. Challenging a professor shows that you are taking their subject seriously enough to wrestle with it.
So offering a well-reasoned disagreement is actually the highest compliment you can pay to their teaching. That relieves so much anxiety. Now, a lot of this intellectual sparring might begin over email before you ever step foot in the office. What is the anatomy of the perfect, highly effective email to a professor?
Email etiquette.
Because I have witnessed students send truly disastrous 10-paragraph, emotionally charged emails at 2 a.m. because they were panicking over a reading assignment.
We've all seen those. Clarity, brevity, and professional distance are your best friends in digital communication. The subject line must be ruthlessly specific. It should contain the course code, the section number, and a 5-word summary of the issue. Do not write help.
Yeah, that just causes panic.
Start with a polite, formal greeting, Dear Professor Smith. Then state your specific question or request in a maximum of 2 or 3 clear sentences. Do not write your life story. Do not explain the complex emotional breakdown you had while reading Chapter 4.
Save that for your friends.
Right. Finally, offer to meet in person during their scheduled office hours to discuss the matter further and sign off professionally. This template demonstrates profound respect for their limited time, while clearly, effectively advocating for your academic needs.
Perfect. Short, sweet, entirely functional and to the point. But writing a clean email from the safety of your dorm room is one thing. Speaking to a professor one-on-one in their quiet, cozy office is another. It is an entirely different, terrifying beast to speak up in a room filled with 20 confident, fast-talking, native-speaking peers.
The seminar room.
This brings us to the academic arena part 2, seminars, group work, and the terror of speaking up.
This specific environment is where the academic culture shock reaches its absolute zenith. We are talking about the reality of graded participation.
Which is such a foreign concept to some.
In many international educational frameworks, the highest virtue is silent absorption. You can sit in a lecture hall without speaking a single word for the entire semester, take immaculate color-coded notes, pass the comprehensive final exam, and receive top marks.
You're rewarded for quiet studying.
Right. In the US, the UK, Canada, or Australia, if you remain silent in a seminar setting, your grade will actively, visibly suffer. You cannot simply be a passive consumer of information. You are required to be a co-creator of the classroom experience.
It is the stuff of nightmares for a language learner. You are sitting there, sweating, a debate is happening. You have a brilliant point, but you are desperately trying to translate the complex thought into English grammar in your head.
The timing is so tough.
By the time you are confident enough to raise your hand, the conversation has completely moved on to a new topic, and you are left in the dust. But before we solve that, let's look at the vocabulary of collaboration, because you will be forced into group projects.
Oh, inevitably.
In these settings, you have to brainstorm, which is the act of throwing raw ideas at the wall without immediate criticism. You absolutely have to know how to delegate assigning specific tasks so that one overachieving person isn't doing 90% of the work. You need to focus on tracking everyone's contribution, follow up on internal deadlines, combine everything into a draft, and collectively agree on the final revisions.
And navigating those group dynamics or attempting to interject in the larger, fast-paced seminar discussions requires a very specific toolkit of functional phrases. You need diplomatic language to enter the fray gracefully.
What common phrases?
You need phrases designed for building on an existing idea, such as to build on what Sarah just outlined. You need the vocabulary of polite, de-escalating disagreement. I see where you're coming from with that point, but looking at the data.
Very diplomatic.
And you need phrases that allow you to float an idea without taking full authoritative ownership, admitting uncertainty. I could be misinterpreting the author here, but my reading was.
Group projects are a completely wild sociological experiment. I always compare a university group project to forming a temporary rock band.
That's a fantastic comparison.
You are randomly thrown into a room with 4 strangers, and suddenly you have to produce a hit song. For the band to survive, everyone has to play their specific instrument. Someone has to be the drummer, keeping the beat, that's the highly organized person setting the internal deadlines, creating the shared Google Doc, and managing the WhatsApp group.
Keeping everyone on track.
Someone wants to be the lead guitarist taking the spotlight. Maybe they are the charismatic native speaker who volunteers to do the final oral presentation. Someone else is doing the quiet, foundational rhythm section. They're grinding through the dense literature review or creating the data visualizations.
And if everyone wants to be the lead singer,
that's where the friction happens. You have 3 people trying to be the lead singer and nobody keeping the beat. You have to delegate these roles immediately and agree on the sheet music, or the entire performance falls apart.
That framework is incredibly useful because it highlights a crucial survival tactic. Just like in a band, you do not all have to be the lead singer to be a valuable member. This applies to the wider seminar as well. This brings us to the golden rule of the Western seminar format.
Which is?
You do not have to be brilliant. You simply have to be present. The pressure international students put on themselves is staggering. They feel that if they open their mouth, they must deliver a groundbreaking Nobel Prize-winning thesis that stuns the room into silence. That is impossible.
Yes. The pressure to be perfect is what causes the silence. So how do you guarantee that you are present when your heart is pounding and you are terrified of looking foolish?
I advise international students to implement the one-question strategy. When you are doing your assigned reading the night before the seminar, your objective is not just to understand the text. Your objective is to find one specific thing that confused you, one statistic that surprised you, or one connection you made to a previous week's lecture.
So you're hunting for a single point.
Yes. You write that single, concise question or observation down on a piece of paper. Your only goal for the entire 2-hour seminar is to raise your hand and read that one question. It guarantees your participation grade.
That's brilliant.
It demonstrates to the professor that you actually read the material,
Yeah.
and it completely removes the paralyzing pressure of having to spontaneously invent a brilliant, highly articulate insight in the middle of a chaotic debate.
I love the one-question strategy. It turns an insurmountable mountain into a completely achievable, concrete task. Now, we've covered the nuances of speaking in class, but we must recognize a harsh reality. Speaking up is only half the battle. Your verbal participation proves you are engaged, but your written word and your professional connections are what will actually establish your GPA, carry you through to graduation, and ultimately launch your career. This brings us to our next critical domain: formal output navigating academic writing and professional networking.
Academic writing is frequently where brilliant international students stumble the hardest. The core issue is that they attempt to directly, literally translate the highly praised writing style of their native language into English.
Which doesn't always work.
It rarely works.
Oh, yeah.
We can look at the German or broadly continental European academic tradition as a prime example. In those traditions, a dense, heavily nested sentence structure is often prized as a marker of high intellect. The writer might weave through multiple clauses, layering context upon context, and finally reveal the core verb or argument at the very end of a paragraph.
Building this suspense.
Right. It is an inductive journey. English academic writing, conversely, is fiercely deductive. It heavily favors absolute clarity, structural directness, and stating your core argument immediately up front.
It's like a treasure map. In the European style, you take the reader on a beautiful, winding journey to find the buried treasure at the end. In the English style, you do not hide the treasure. You put the treasure in a bright display case in the very first sentence of the introduction.
That is an incredibly accurate visual.
We need to equip the listener with the right vocabulary to build that display case. When you write an academic paper, you aren't just saying things. You argue, you posit, or you contend. You don't write, "I think this is true." You write, "Evidence suggests," or "The data indicates."
Elevating the language.
You rely on mechanical transitions, like "furthermore," "moreover," or conversely, to steer the reader's logic seamlessly. You analyze the implicit assumptions versus the explicit statements, and you offer a structured critique.
The vocabulary fundamentally alters the perceived authority of the writer. Let's apply that practically. Let's examine a transformation from basic fluency to academic authority.
Okay, let's do a complete sentence makeover. Imagine a first-year international student writes this grammatically correct but conceptually weak sentence in their essay. The book talks about inequality.
Grammatically fine.
There is no grammar error there, but it sounds like a 12-year-old's book report. It lacks teeth. Let's upgrade that thought using the tools of strong academic English. Instead of "the book talks about inequality," we elevate it to "the author examines systemic inequality through the lens of intersectional theory."
Analyze the mechanics of that difference. We replace the weak verb "talks about" with the active, piercing academic verb "examines." We upgraded the vague concept of inequality by adding precise scope, systemic inequality.
Giving it focus.
And adding "through the lens of" demonstrates methodological awareness. It shows the student understands how the author built their argument. It transforms a simplistic observation into a rigorous, university-level academic claim. It commands respect.
It instantly sounds so much smarter, but the underlying thought didn't change. It is purely about utilizing the right specialized linguistic tools. And speaking of specialized tools, we have to address the other side of formal output, networking.
The dreaded N-word.
For a lot of international students, this word makes them physically cringe. But it comes with an unavoidable vocabulary. Optimizing your LinkedIn profile, aggressively finding a research opportunity, navigating the delicate process of asking for a letter of recommendation, or surviving the awkwardness of a career fair.
That's a whole ecosystem.
And if you are trying to survive financially, you need to understand the logistics of the workplace. Taking a shift, deciphering the taxes on your pay stub, securing a summer internship, writing a persuasive cover letter, formatting your resume or CV to local standards, and crushing a behavioral interview.
It is absolutely crucial to address the emotional and cultural friction surrounding networking. For many international students, the concept of networking feels deeply uncomfortable. In several global cultures, intentionally leveraging professional acquaintances or asking a professor for a career favor feels inherently transactional.
Like you're using them.
Yes. It can feel greasy, manipulative, or even slightly corrupt. It feels cynical, like you're using people rather than relying on your own hard work. But the necessary reframe is this. In English-speaking university cultures, networking is not a cynical shortcut.
What is it then?
It is the agreed-upon standard mechanism for the distribution of opportunity. It is simply how the ecosystem breathes. When you ask a professor to write a letter of recommendation, you are not begging for a corrupt favor. Writing those letters and ushering the next generation of bright minds into the professional field is a core expected component of their job description.
That is the reality. You have to get out of your own way, drop the cultural baggage that says asking for help is weak, and engage with the system as it exists, which leads us perfectly into the emotional core of this entire deep dive.
Bringing it all together.
We have comprehensively covered the campus bureaucracy, the dorms, the unspoken rules of small talk, the expectations of the professors, the seminar survival tactics, the writing mechanics, and the networking ecosystem. But let's be brutally honest.
You can memorize all of it?
You can memorize every single vocabulary word we just discussed. You can know exactly how to structure an email or a thesis, and absolutely none of it matters. None of it functions if you are physically paralyzed by the fear of making a mistake. It is time to tackle the deep psychology of speaking a second language, overcoming the crushing anxiety, and building an actionable survival toolkit.
The psychological barrier is undeniably the most formidable obstacle. There is a deeply frustrating, almost tragic phenomenon that every single advanced language learner has experienced. I refer to it as the smart thought stuck in translation.
I know exactly the feeling you're describing.
Picture this. You are sitting in a high-level seminar. The professor asks a complex question. Instantly, a brilliant, highly nuanced, deeply insightful answer forms in your native language. You know the material. But as you attempt to translate that massive thought into English, you freeze.
You get stuck on a single word.
Yes. You second-guess your preposition. You worry that you are using the wrong verb tense. You hesitate for 3 seconds. And in that tiny window of hesitation, a native speaker raises their hand and blurts out almost the exact same concept you were holding in your mind, except they say it using much simpler, less elegant English.
And the professor loves it.
The professor praises them. And you sit there, trapped in silence, feeling a toxic mixture of relief that you didn't have to speak, and intense, burning regret that your intelligence remains invisible to the room.
It is absolute agony. It creates this profound imposter syndrome. You start to feel like everyone in the room thinks you aren't intelligent, but the truth is, you just have a processing bandwidth issue. The cognitive processor is overloaded trying to handle grammar, vocabulary, and social anxiety all at once.
It's just too much data for the brain.
So how do we rewire this? What is the practical, on-the-ground strategy to break the paralysis?
We have developed 4 concrete, highly effective strategies to bypass this psychological gridlock. Strategy 1 is embracing the good enough rule. You must radically accept that in rapid verbal communication, clarity beats sophisticated vocabulary every single time.
Simple is better.
A simple, clunky, grammatically imperfect sentence that successfully moves the conversation forward is infinitely more valuable to the world than a perfectly constructed, poetic paragraph that remains permanently locked inside your own head. Perfection is the enemy of connection.
100%. Done is better than perfect. Strategy 2 addresses the physical panic. Slow down by 20%. When we are nervous, our physiological fight-or-flight response kicks in. Our heart rate spikes, adrenaline floods our system, and we subconsciously try to speak as fast as possible just to get the agonizing spotlight off of us.
It's a natural instinct to rush.
But speaking at maximum speed in a second language inevitably leads to stumbling, mispronouncing words, and losing your train of thought. Intentionally forcing your cadence down by 20% does 2 magic things. First, it gives your brain those desperate microseconds it needs to fetch the correct vocabulary. Second, and paradoxically, speaking slowly makes you sound more thoughtful, more confident, and more authoritative to the listener.
Strategy 3 is deeply intertwined with that pacing. Embrace the pause. In many cultures, silence during a conversation feels like a failure of the interaction. We rush to fill the dead air with filler words like, or like.
We hate awkward silences.
But in a Western academic setting, a deliberate, unhurried pause after a complex question is not viewed as a sign of stupidity. It signifies deep, measured thought. It is a respected rhetorical device. You do not need to fill every single second of airtime with sound.
And while you are taking that powerful, authoritative pause, you can utilize strategy 4, anchor phrases. These are pre-memorized, automatic phrases that you deploy specifically to buy your brain processing time without losing your turn to speak.
Give me an example.
Things like, let me think about the best way to phrase this, or that is a fascinating perspective if I understand your underlying point correctly. These phrases require 0 linguistic brain power to say because you have them memorized, but they keep you actively engaged in the flow of conversation while the gears are furiously turning in your head to construct your actual argument.
Implementing these 4 strategies completely reframes the entire psychological experience of speaking. You transition from viewing conversation as a high-stakes performance where every mistake is a failure to viewing it as a fluid, adaptable process.
I look at the entire study abroad experience like gathering data in a massive science experiment. And in science, making mistakes is just the fundamental reality of the scientific method.
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine you have 2 international students. Student A is terrified of looking foolish. They want their English to be perfect, so they stay completely silent in class for an entire month. After 30 days, they have learned absolutely 0 new things about how to improve their spontaneous speaking. They protected their ego, but they starved their growth.
A safe but stagnant approach.
Student B is also terrified, but they force themselves to speak up. They stumble over their words, they use the wrong verb tense, they mispronounce a technical term, and they make 10 embarrassing mistakes in 1 week. Student B just successfully gathered 10 pieces of vital, actionable data. They learn 10 specific things they need to fix. The student who makes the mistakes, who wades into the messiness of the language, is the one actually running the experiment and getting the results.
That perspective is undeniably accurate. The mistakes are not a distraction from the curriculum. The mistakes are the curriculum. The friction is where the learning happens. So, to force you out of the theoretical and into the practical, we have designed a highly actionable 30-day challenge for the listener. We have broken it down into 3 escalating phases to systematically dismantle that speaking anxiety.
Okay, if you are listening to this on your way to class or sitting in your dorm, here is your mission. Days 1 through 7, initiate 1 small talk exchange daily, just 1. The stakes are incredibly low.
Like a coffee shop chat.
Right. It didn't matter if it's a 30-second interaction with the barista asking how their shift is going, or a passing comment about the freezing rain to the person standing next to you in the elevator. 1 verbal handshake every single day to build the muscle memory of spontaneous speech.
Moving to days 8 through 14, you will maintain a conversation journal every day. Physically write down 3 new words, slang terms, or specific academic phrases you heard a native speaker use naturally. Then, the critical step.
Which is using them.
Yes. Actively force yourself to integrate those specific words into your own conversations the following day. This moves vocabulary from passive understanding to active deployment.
And finally, days 15 through 30. This is the boss level. You must contribute 1 idea in an academic setting every single day you have class. Whether it is using the 1-question strategy in a massive seminar, delegating a task in a group project, or sitting down in office hours to bounce a thesis idea off your professor. Just 1 idea.
That consistency is key.
If you commit to this progressive exposure for 30 days, your baseline anxiety will plummet, and your entire relationship with the English language will permanently change.
As we synthesize the massive amount of cultural, administrative, and psychological territory we've unpacked today, the overarching unifying theme is that the pursuit of perfection is a dangerous illusion. The true goal of studying abroad, of leaving your home and immersing yourself in this terrifying, beautiful, chaotic new environment, is not to produce flawless machine-like grammatical output. The goal is human connection. It is about bravely participating in the intellectual and social community that surrounds you, flaws and all.
You are so much more ready than you think you are. You have the map unlocked, you understand the vital vocabulary, you grasp the unspoken cultural rules of the game, and you have the strategies to overcome the panic. Now you just have to step out of the airport, walk onto that campus, and start playing.
And as you prepare for that reality, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over.
I'm ready.
As language learners, we spend an agonizing amount of time worrying about how to translate our native personality perfectly into English. We desperately want to prove that we are just as funny, just as sharp, and just as intellectually nuanced as we are in our mother tongue. We treat English as a restrictive filter. But what if that is entirely the wrong goal?
Oh, wow.
When you finally stop worrying about translating your old self perfectly and start fully embracing the unique person you naturally become when speaking English, how might this messy, imperfect second language actually unlock a braver, more open, and more resilient version of yourself?
I love that concept. A braver, older version of yourself built specifically for this new world. What a perfect note to end our discussion on. Remember, the world doesn't need a flawless, sterile textbook recitation of your language skills. It just needs you to jump into the wonderfully murky, complicated waters of real conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on this massive journey today. Before you go, we need you to do 3 things. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. And please leave a comment below telling us exactly where you are studying abroad and what specific campus situation you are most nervous about facing. We read every single one of them. Until next time, keep speaking, keep making those glorious, necessary mistakes, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.